Keanu Reeves was walking into a large hall filled with lights and cameras. Everyone's eyes turned to him the moment he entered. The air felt heavy with silence, and people whispered his name. For most celebrities, such a moment was a chance to shine with pride. But Keanu did not look for attention. Instead, he paused, greeted the staff working near the door, and even helped an old stage assistant carry a heavy box to the side. The cameras did not capture this simple act, but those who noticed were touched. They saw humility in a man who could have walked past without caring. This was the first sign of the kind of person Keanu truly was. At the same time, Sandra Bullock was already inside, sitting quietly on a chair, waiting for her part in the event. She was dressed simply, not trying to draw eyes, though everyone noticed her natural charm. Sandra had always been admired for her talent, but what made her unforgettable was her kindness. When she saw a young assistant trembling with nervousness because she dropped some papers, Sandra bent down, smiled, and helped gather the pages herself. She said softly, "Don't worry, we all make mistakes." And the young assistant's face lit up. This moment, small but powerful, showed the same spirit Keanu carried: respect and kindness without needing applause. As the night moved forward, a sudden problem shook the hall. One of the spotlights hanging above started to spark. The audience gasped as the lights flickered. Technicians rushed to fix it, but the fear had already spread. People whispered about danger, and the event seemed ready to collapse into panic. While many stars moved back, worried for themselves, Keanu calmly walked toward the technicians. He did not act like a hero for the cameras. Instead, he asked, "What can I do to help?" His voice was steady, and the crew, surprised, explained they needed space and focus. Keanu nodded and stood beside them, guiding the crowd away from danger with patience, not force. His calm presence steadied the room. Then Sandra stepped forward too. She saw the tension in the audience and realized fear was stronger than the real problem. With a gentle smile, she addressed the people. "Everything will be fine. Please stay calm." Her words, filled with warmth, worked like light cutting through darkness. The audience slowly grew quiet, their fear replaced with trust. Sandra's voice did not sound commanding, but it carried hope. This was her gift. She could connect with people's hearts when they needed it most. For the next minutes, Keanu and Sandra stood side by side, not on stage as actors, but as human beings. They did not care about the flashing cameras or what headlines would say tomorrow. What mattered was protecting the people around them. When the technicians finally fixed the spotlight, applause filled the hall, not just for the repaired lights, but for the quiet strength both of them had shown. It was not a movie scene, but it felt like one, real, raw, and unforgettable. But behind the applause, there was a shadow that few noticed. Among the guests was a man who had always envied both Keanu and Sandra. He worked in the same industry, but had never received the same love or respect. His smile in public was polite, but inside he burned with jealousy. He whispered to himself, "People only see their kindness, but no one knows the full story." This hidden bitterness would soon grow into something that could test both Keanu and Sandra in ways they never expected. That night, after the event ended, Keanu walked outside into the cool air. Instead of rushing into his car, he stayed back to greet fans waiting at the gate. Some of them were young, some old, and one was even in a wheelchair. Keanu walked over, signed every autograph, and knelt down to speak eye to eye with the person in the wheelchair. No cameras were left to capture it, but his words and presence gave comfort that money or fame could never buy. Sandra soon joined him, and together they spoke with the people as if they were friends, not strangers. This was the beginning of a story not about fame, but about true kindness. Yet, while they showed kindness outside, trouble was building inside the walls of the industry. Whispers spread that the jealous man was planning something that could damage their names. He believed he could prove that kindness was only an act, not the truth. What he did not understand was that real kindness, the kind that lived in Keanu and Sandra, could not be destroyed so easily. It was stronger than envy, stronger than lies, and it would inspire millions before this journey ended. The story of Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock was about to unfold in ways no one could imagine. What began with simple acts of respect would soon turn into a test of resilience, a fight against shadows, and a proof that humility can inspire the world. The morning after the event, newspapers and social media were filled with photos of Keanu and Sandra. Some headlines spoke of their calm presence during the light crisis, while others praised their humility for staying with the audience after the show. People shared videos of Sandra's gentle words and Keanu's calm guidance. One post said, "In a world full of stars, these two shine not because of fame, but because of kindness." Another person wrote, "I was there last night, and I saw them care for people like family. It wasn't acting, it was real." Keanu, however, did not even read the headlines. He woke up early, made a simple breakfast, and spent time sitting by his window, staring at the quiet street outside. For him, kindness was never about attention. It was about doing the right thing even when no one noticed. Sandra was the same. She went back home and called her mother to tell her about the event. Her mother laughed and said, "That's who you are, Sandra. You always calm storms with your smile." Sandra's heart warmed at the words, because deep down she believed kindness was not a show. It was a choice made again and again, every single day. But while they carried on with life in peace, the jealous man was already building a plan. His name was Victor, a producer who had once dreamed of working with great stars but never received the same recognition. He had money, connections, and power in certain circles, but he lacked what Keanu and Sandra had, respect from ordinary people. And that burned him from within. He thought to himself, if I can prove their kindness is fake, people will stop admiring them. Then they will see that stars are just like anyone else, selfish and weak. Envy twisted his heart, and he decided he would not stop until their light was dimmed. Victor began to spread quiet rumors. He whispered to journalists that Keanu's humility was just a tool to keep his fame alive, and that Sandra's kindness was nothing more than an image built by her team. Some believed him, some ignored him, but slowly the whispers grew louder. Online posts appeared claiming that both stars were hiding secrets. Though none of it was true, the idea of scandal always traveled faster than truth. People started asking questions, and the doubt planted by Victor began to grow like a shadow over the bright image of kindness. Keanu noticed the change. When he walked into a coffee shop one morning, a man sitting by the window whispered something to his friend, and both looked at him with suspicious eyes. It did not make Keanu angry, but it made him feel heavy inside. He thought, why do people always believe the worst so quickly? Yet he still greeted the barista with a smile, thanked her kindly, and even left a tip larger than expected. The barista, surprised, whispered to herself, maybe the rumors are wrong. This man really is different. Without realizing it, Keanu had already begun to fight the whispers, not with words, but with actions. Sandra faced her own test. One evening, she was leaving a small bookstore when a woman stopped her and said, "I read online that your kindness is fake. Is that true?" The question stung, not because Sandra cared about her own image, but because she hated the thought of kindness being treated as something false. She took a deep breath, looked into the woman's eyes, and said, "If kindness feels real in the moment, then it is real. You cannot fake the warmth of helping someone or the honesty of comforting them. If you felt it, then it was true."
The woman stood silent for a moment, then smiled softly, realizing the truth in Sandra's words. But Victor was not done. He wanted something bigger, something that would shake the faith people had in both stars. He planned to create a staged situation, a trap where cameras would capture Keanu or Sandra in a moment that could be twisted into selfishness or pride. He believed that once such an image was spread, the world would forget the good they had done. His heart, filled with bitterness, could not understand that true character is stronger than lies. One evening, Victor arranged a charity gala and invited both Keanu and Sandra. He knew they cared about causes that help children and families, and he used that to lure them in. The gala was glamorous, with chandeliers shining and music filling the air, but under its surface, Victor had placed his trap. He asked a struggling journalist, desperate for money, to secretly provoke Keanu with harsh words. The plan was simple: capture Keanu losing his calm, twist it into arrogance, and spread it as proof that his humility was only a mask. When Keanu arrived, dressed simply, he greeted everyone with quiet respect. He took time to speak with the volunteers working at the gala, asking about their lives and thanking them for their efforts. Sandra soon joined him, her presence lighting up the hall, and together they made people feel welcome. Everything seemed peaceful until the journalist approached. The journalist stepped forward and loudly said, "Keanu, you think you are humble, but isn't this all just for show? Don't you use kindness to keep yourself relevant?" The hall grew quiet. Cameras turned. All eyes were on Keanu, waiting to see his reaction. Even Victor, hiding in the shadows, smiled coldly, thinking his plan was about to succeed. But Keanu did not raise his voice. He did not look angry. Instead, he looked straight into the journalist's eyes with calm and said, "If kindness is only for show, then it will fade quickly. But if it is real, it does not need approval. I choose kindness because I know what pain feels like. And if my small actions ease someone's pain even for a moment, then that is enough." His words, spoken gently, filled the hall with silence deeper than any applause. Sandra stepped beside him and added softly, "Real kindness cannot be staged. You can only see it in the way people treat those who cannot give them anything in return." The hall erupted in applause. The journalist stood frozen, realizing he couldn't twist such honesty. Victor's plan began to crumble in that moment, but his envy grew sharper. He told himself, "This is only the beginning. I will find another way."
Days passed after the charity gala, and the world could not stop talking about Keanu and Sandra's words. Clips of the moment were shared millions of times online. People replayed the part where Keanu calmly said, "I choose kindness because I know what pain feels like." And many wrote in the comments about how those words had touched their hearts. Strangers began sharing their own stories of pain, grief, and how a small act of kindness had saved them during hard times. For many, it was not just about 2 stars. It was about remembering that kindness could still exist in a world often filled with cruelty. But while millions were inspired, Victor sat alone in his office, staring at the screen in anger. Every headline praised the 2 stars. Every post reminded him of his failure. His plan to expose them had not only collapsed, but it had also made them stronger in the eyes of the world. He clenched his fists and whispered, "They will not win forever. People forget kindness quickly. I will find their weakness." The room around him was filled with expensive furniture and glass walls, yet it felt empty, because envy had eaten away the joy in his life. He could not see that his war was not against Keanu and Sandra, but against the shadows inside his own heart. Meanwhile, Keanu kept living simply. One morning he rode the subway like he always did, wearing plain clothes, unnoticed by most. He gave up his seat to an elderly man, and quietly smiled when the man thanked him. On the other side of the city, Sandra spent her afternoon visiting a children's hospital. She did not bring cameras or media. She brought books and toys,
sat with the children, and listened to their stories. One little girl with weak arms asked her, "Why are you so kind when you don't have to be?" Sandra held the girl's hand gently and said, "Because someone once showed me kindness when I needed it, and I promised myself I would pass it on." Tears filled the girl's eyes, and though she could not say much, her small smile told Sandra everything. But shadows were gathering again. Victor's next move was more dangerous, and this time it reached beyond rumors or staged traps. He paid people to dig into the private lives of Keanu and Sandra, hoping to twist anything from their past into scandal. They searched through old friends, distant relatives, and forgotten moments. What Victor failed to understand was that while Keanu and Sandra had faced pain, loss, and mistakes, those experiences were not weaknesses. They were the very roots of their strength. One night, a journalist approached Keanu with a question about his past tragedies, about the family he had lost. The hall went silent, waiting for him to stumble or turn away. Instead, Keanu paused, took a deep breath, and said quietly, "Loss teaches you what matters. When you lose someone, you understand how precious every small kindness can be. I live with grief, but I also live with gratitude for the moments I was given. I cannot change the past, but I can choose to make today better for someone else." His honesty disarmed the entire room. It was not weakness. It was truth that no rumor could destroy. Sandra, too, faced a question about her struggles, about the challenges of balancing fame and personal life. She smiled softly and said, "Life is never perfect. I have had moments where I felt broken, but every time someone lifted me up with a simple act of love. So if I can be that light for someone else, then every struggle was worth it." Her voice carried warmth that no lie could erase. Those who listened felt their own hearts open, realizing that even stars faced storms, and it was kindness that kept them standing. But Victor refused to stop. He thought, "If I cannot break them with lies, I will use their kindness against them. I will find a way to turn their greatest strength into their downfall."
After the staged fire, the world once again saw the truth about Keanu and Sandra. News channels replayed the footage of them guiding people out, holding hands of children, carrying the elderly, and refusing to leave until everyone was safe. One reporter said, "In the face of fear, they chose others over themselves. That is not acting, that is humanity." Millions watched and millions were inspired. Strangers online began sharing how they too wanted to bring kindness into their own lives, even in small ways. Teachers spoke of it in classrooms, parents told their children the story, and ordinary people whispered to each other, "If they can do this in danger, then maybe I can be kinder too." But while the world grew warmer with inspiration, Victor grew colder with rage. Each failure cut him deeper. He sat alone in his expensive home, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He saw not strength, but weakness, because envy had consumed him completely. "They cannot always win," he muttered to himself. "Everyone has a breaking point. If they believe kindness can save them, I will prove them wrong." His plan now was darker, more personal. Instead of attacking their image, he would attack their hearts. Victor discovered that both Keanu and Sandra were preparing for a joint charity project to build homes for struggling families. It was a dream they had spoken about quietly for years, and now it was finally close to happening. Keanu had already visited construction sites to meet workers and shake their hands. Sandra had spent hours speaking to families about their hopes and fears. For them, the project was not about fame, but about giving dignity and shelter to those who needed it most. Victor saw this as his chance. He thought, "If I can destroy this project, I can destroy their hope. I can make them doubt themselves."
The charity event to launch the project was held in a large open park. Hundreds of families gathered, waiting with hope in their eyes. Children held balloons, volunteers handed out food, and music played gently in the background. When Keanu and Sandra arrived, the crowd cheered, not because they were stars, but because they were symbols of hope. Both of them walked through the crowd, shaking hands, hugging children, listening to stories. There were no barriers between them and the people. They blended in as if they belonged. But hidden among the crowd was a group of people hired by Victor. Their task was to create chaos. They spread lies among the families, whispering, "This project is fake. They're only using you for attention. There will be no real homes." At first, the whispers seemed small, but soon confusion spread. Voices rose. Some families began asking if the project was truly real, if they had been lied to again. Fear and doubt returned, threatening to destroy the hope that had just begun to grow. Keanu noticed the shift. He saw the worried faces, the trembling hands of parents who had suffered too much disappointment in life. Instead of defending himself with anger, he stepped onto the small stage and spoke gently, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know you have been let down before. I know promises have been broken. But I stand here not to promise, but to work. I have walked with the workers. I have touched the bricks that will build your homes. I will not leave until these homes are real. You do not need to trust my words. Trust the work you will see with your own eyes." The crowd fell silent, listening. Sandra stepped forward beside him and added softly, "You are not alone. We are not here to stand above you. We are here to stand with you. This project is not ours. It is yours. It belongs to every child who needs a safe bed, every parent who needs peace of mind, and together we will make it happen." Her words reached deep into the hearts of the families. Tears filled eyes, and slowly, hope returned. The crowd began to cheer again, but in the shadows, Victor clenched his fists. Once again, their kindness had turned his trap into strength. But this time, he did not disappear. He stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, his face filled with false concern. He spoke loudly, "But what if they fail you like everyone else? What if they leave when things get hard?" The crowd turned to him, waiting. Keanu looked at Victor with calm eyes, recognizing him at once. He knew this was the man behind the whispers, the traps, the lies. Instead of exposing him, he simply said, "Failure is possible. Mistakes are possible, but walking away is not. We will face the hard times together. And when things are difficult, kindness is not weakness. It is the only strength we have." The words cut deeper than any weapon, because they were true. Victor felt exposed, but his envy twisted further into hate. He turned away, promising himself, "If I cannot break them in front of others, I will break them in secret. I will find a way to make their kindness cost them everything." That night, as the event ended, Keanu and Sandra sat quietly at the edge of the park, away from the cameras. Children ran around, families laughed softly, and for a moment, peace filled the air. Sandra looked at Keanu and said, "Why do people like Victor hate kindness so much?" Keanu thought a long moment before answering, "Because kindness shines a light on the emptiness inside them. Instead of facing that emptiness, they try to destroy the light." Sandra sighed and whispered, "Then we cannot let the light go out." Keanu nodded, and though they smiled, both knew the battle was far from over.
The night after the charity event, Keanu sat alone in his small apartment. Though he was a star, he lived simply. The room was quiet, with only the sound of rain tapping against the window. He thought about the families he had met, their tired faces, their fragile hope. He felt the weight of their trust, and he knew that this project was no longer just a plan, it was a promise. A promise to people who had been let down too many times before. Keanu whispered to himself, "We cannot fail them. Not now, not ever." His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of determination that no rumor or trap could break. On the other side of the city, Sandra sat with her notebook open. She often wrote down thoughts after long days, a way to clear her heart. She wrote, "Kindness is easy when the world is quiet. True kindness is tested when fear and doubt surround you." She closed the notebook and looked out at the night. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. For a moment, she felt the heaviness of the battles they had already faced. But then she remembered the little girl in the hospital, the families at the park, the children holding balloons and smiling again. Those memories lit a fire in her heart, stronger than the shadows of doubt. But Victor was not resting. He walked through his office late at night, his mind racing with darker plans. He had seen Keanu and Sandra survive rumors, survive staged traps, survive lies whispered into crowds. Each time they had turned his poison into strength. His envy had grown into obsession. He could no longer bear to see them inspire millions. "They will pay," he muttered, his voice low and trembling with hate. "I will not let kindness win. I will make them regret every act of mercy they ever showed." In his mind, it was no longer about breaking their image, it was about breaking their spirit. Victor's next move was personal. He hired men to follow them, to watch their steps, to look for moments when they were vulnerable. He believed that if he could hurt them where it mattered most, their kindness would crumble. One night, as Sandra left a quiet dinner with friends, she noticed a shadow following her. She walked calmly, not showing fear, but she knew something was wrong. When she turned the corner, a man stepped out, blocking her path. Before he could speak, a stranger from across the street shouted, "Leave her alone!" The man fled, and Sandra was safe. She never knew that Keanu had quietly asked friends in the city to keep watch, worried that Victor might try something dangerous. Even in private, their kindness protected each other. Keanu faced his own moment of threat. One evening, as he left a meeting about the charity homes, a car swerved toward him on the street. The tires screeched, and for a moment it looked like disaster. But the driver pulled back at the last second, speeding away into the night. People nearby gasped, and Keanu simply bowed his head, whispering, "Life is fragile, but fear will not control me." Instead of hiding, he returned the next day to the same meeting, standing even stronger than before. As these shadows grew, the pressure of the project also increased. Delays began at the construction site. Some workers refused to come back after being threatened by unknown voices. Families who had once smiled now asked with trembling voices if the homes would ever be built. The air grew heavy with fear, and for the first time, Keanu and Sandra felt the weight of doubt pressing hard. They met one evening in a quiet cafe, sitting in the corner away from attention. Sandra looked at Keanu and whispered, "What if Victor succeeds? What if we cannot keep our promise?" Keanu looked back at her, his eyes steady but tired. "Then we will still keep trying, because even if we fail, we cannot stop showing kindness. It is who we are." Their words carried strength, but their hearts still felt the burden. And Victor, watching from afar, smiled coldly. He believed his plan was working. He told himself, "They are bending under the weight. Soon they will break." But what he could not understand is that true resilience is not about never bending. It is about bending and still standing tall. The turning point came one morning when Keanu visited the construction site again. He found a group of workers gathered outside, afraid to continue because of the threats. Instead of scolding them, he joined them. He sat on the ground beside them and said, "I understand your fear. I am afraid too. But when fear stops us, it wins. And I believe that if we stand together, we can finish this. Not for fame, not for money, but for the families who are waiting. If you cannot trust words, then trust that I will be here with you every day until it is done." His quiet voice carried more power than any speech. The workers looked at him, surprised by his humility, and slowly they agreed to return. Sandra took a different path. She spent time with the families who were losing hope. She sat with them in their small rooms, listening to their stories, holding their hands. She told them, "Your voices matter, your dreams matter. Even if the world forgets you, we will not." One mother broke into tears and said, "Everyone promises us hope, but you are the first to sit with us in our pain." In that moment, she realized that the real gift was not just the homes they were building, it was the dignity of being seen, heard, and respected. But Victor was not finished. His next move was the darkest yet. He decided to strike at the heart of the project, planning to sabotage the construction itself. He wanted to create a disaster so big that Keanu and Sandra could not recover. In his mind, this was the final battle. If he could turn their dream into rubble, he could turn their kindness into despair.
The new homes had finally begun to take shape. Brick by brick, wall by wall, the dream was turning real. Families visited the site every weekend, watching with shining eyes as the buildings grew taller. Children ran around the open ground, already imagining the rooms they would soon sleep in. For many, this was the first time hope felt solid, like something they could touch. Keanu walked among the workers every day, helping carry wood, speaking with builders, thanking them with his quiet smile. Sandra spent her time sitting with families, writing down their wishes for the homes. Small things like a window facing the sunrise or a little garden outside for flowers. These details, though simple, showed that the project was about more than walls. It was about love. But beneath this hope, danger was rising. Victor had grown desperate. His earlier traps had failed, his rumors had collapsed, and even his threats could not break the spirit of the project. His envy had now turned into obsession, and he could no longer think of anything else. "If I destroy the homes, I destroy their hope," he whispered to himself in the shadows of his empty office. He planned to sabotage the site, to cause a collapse that would not only ruin the buildings, but also put lives at risk. For him, it was no longer about reputation. It was about ending the light that he could not bear to see. The night before his plan, the city was quiet. Rain fell softly, and the site stood silent under the street lamps. Victor's men moved in the dark, carrying tools, loosening beams, and planting small devices that would weaken the structure. They thought no one would notice until it was too late. But destiny has a way of revealing the truth. One of the workers, unable to sleep, walked to the site to check the progress. He saw shadows moving and heard the sound of metal scraping against wood. His heart pounded as he realized something was wrong. He ran to warn Keanu and Sandra. By morning, both stars arrived at the site, the workers standing beside them, shaking with fear. Keanu looked around carefully. The walls stood tall, but something about them felt fragile. Sandra placed her hand on the bricks and whispered, "This does not feel right." The worker explained what he had seen, and suddenly the truth became clear. Someone was trying to destroy everything.
Instead of calling the press or shouting in anger, Keanu gathered the workers and families together. His voice was calm, but his words carried urgency. Someone does not want this dream to live. They want to destroy your hope, but we will not let them. We will rebuild again and again until no shadow can take this away. The families, though frightened, nodded with tears in their eyes. They had lived with broken promises their whole lives, but this time they felt something different. This time they felt protected. As the investigation continued, signs of sabotage were found. Beams were cut, bolts were loosened, and hidden traps lay waiting. It was clear this was not an accident. Whispers spread quickly. People suspected who was behind it, though no one said his name out loud. But instead of blaming, Keanu and Sandra focused on safety. They stayed at the site for days, refusing to leave, standing shoulder to shoulder with workers to ensure every wall was rebuilt stronger. Sandra told the families, "These walls will not only stand, they will tell your story, that you are worth protecting, worth building for." The media soon learned of the sabotage. Reporters swarmed the site, asking if the project would now be abandoned. Keanu faced the cameras and said simply, "Hope cannot be abandoned. Even if you knock down these walls, we will raise them again. Kindness is not weak, it is stronger than destruction." His steady eyes and quiet tone spread across every television and phone screen. The world once again saw a man and a woman who chose resilience over despair. But Victor was not finished. His obsession had crossed the line of reason. Late at night, he stood on a hill near the site, looking down at the half-built homes glowing under floodlights. He whispered, "They think they are stronger than me, but I will prove them wrong. I will not stop until I see them broken." His hatred had grown so deep that even his reflection in the car window looked like a stranger. What Victor did not realize was that his war was no longer just against Keanu and Sandra. It was against the very idea of kindness itself. And kindness, once rooted in the hearts of people, could not be erased. Families had already begun to defend the site, staying at night in groups, holding lanterns, protecting the dream that belonged to them. Workers came even on their days off, bringing their friends, determined to finish what they had started. The spirit of unity was growing, and in that unity, Keanu and Sandra's kindness was multiplied 1,000 times. Still, the danger was real. Everyone knew Victor would not stop. His final strike was coming, and it would be heavier than all the others. Sandra sensed it one night when she looked at the horizon and whispered, "The storm is still ahead." Keanu nodded, his face calm but firm. "Then we will meet it together."
The day of the final test arrived without warning. The homes were nearly complete now. Walls stood strong, roofs were being fixed, and children were already running through the empty halls, calling out with laughter as if they were exploring castles. Hope had never been stronger. The families could see their future rising from the ground. But as joy filled the air, shadows still moved in secret. Victor had planned his last strike. This time, it was not whispers, not traps, not sabotage in the dark. He wanted a public destruction that would shake everyone's faith once and for all. He arranged for machines to block the delivery of supplies. He paid men to stir anger among workers, to convince them they were risking their lives. And finally, he planned to cause a violent clash at the site itself, hoping the chaos would ruin everything. In his twisted mind, if Keanu and Sandra stood in the middle of that storm, their kindness would finally collapse under the weight of fear and anger. But what Victor did not understand was that kindness, once it had rooted itself in the hearts of many, could no longer be broken by one man's hate. The morning of the clash, hundreds gathered at the site. Families stood by side with workers, volunteers, and friends who had been inspired by the story of the homes. Banners were raised with simple words, "Hope lives here." Sandra moved among the families, holding hands, whispering calm into frightened hearts. Keanu walked with the workers, steadying their courage, reminding them why they had begun this journey. Then the chaos came. Trucks blocked the roads. Angry shouts echoed from a group of men at the edge of the site, waving fists, pushing forward, trying to break through. Dust filled the air as fear spread like fire. Children clinging to their parents. Some families began to cry, believing everything was about to be lost. Cameras from the media captured the scene, waiting to see if this was the end of hope. Keanu stepped forward first. He did not raise his voice, but his calm tone cut through the noise. "I know you are afraid. I know some of you were told lies. But look at these walls. Look at these families. This is not a dream. It is real. If you destroy it, you destroy not us, but them. And what kind of victory is that?" His words hung heavy in the air. The shouting slowed, but anger still burned. Sandra then walked to the front, her voice filled with steady warmth. "You can break bricks, you can stop trucks, you can throw anger into the air, but you cannot break the spirit of people who believe in kindness. Every child here deserves a safe place to sleep. Every parent deserves peace of mind. If you truly want to fight, then fight me. But if you have even a drop of humanity left, then stand with us, not against us." Her eyes glistened with tears, but her voice did not shake. The crowd grew quiet. Even some of Victor's men lowered their heads, ashamed of what they had been part of. The families began to cheer softly, their courage returning. Children shouted, "This is our home!" and their small voices carried more power than anger ever could. And then, from the shadows, Victor stepped forward at last. His face was pale, his eyes dark with fury. He shouted, "You think you are untouchable. You think kindness will save you. It is all fake. The world is cruel, and I will prove it." He raised his hand as if to order his men forward, but in that moment, something unexpected happened. The very men he had hired refused to move. They looked at Keanu and Sandra, then at the families, and slowly backed away. Their hearts had been touched, even if for a second, by the truth they had seen. Victor stood frozen, realizing he was alone. The power he thought he controlled had vanished. His anger turned to despair. He fell to his knees, whispering, "Why does the world love them and not me?" Keanu walked closer, his expression calm but filled with compassion. He placed a hand on Victor's shoulder and said, "The world does not need more hate. It needs more kindness. You are not hated, Victor. You are lost. You can choose a different path. It is never too late." Sandra stood beside Keanu and added softly, "You tried to break us, but in truth, you only showed us how strong kindness can be. You can still be part of that strength if you choose." Her words were not sharp. They were gentle, like a hand reaching into the darkness. For a moment, Victor's eyes filled with tears. He looked at the families, at the children, at the workers, and he saw something he had never felt before. Unity born not of power, but of compassion. He lowered his head, ashamed, and walked away quietly. No one stopped him, because in that moment they knew his fight was no longer against them, it was against himself. The danger had passed. The families cheered, workers raised their tools, and the site came alive again with determination. Keanu and Sandra stood in the middle of it all, not as stars, not as icons, but as human beings, who had proven that humility and kindness could withstand storms of envy, lies, and even hatred. Months later, the homes were finished. The opening day was filled with laughter, music, and tears of joy. Children ran through their new rooms, parents held each other, and neighbors gathered in celebration. On the stage, Keanu spoke simply, "This is not our victory. It is yours. Every brick stands because you refuse to give up hope." Sandra followed with words that echoed in every heart. Kindness is not about one moment. It is about every choice we make, every day. And if we choose it together, nothing can destroy us. The story of their kindness spread across the world, inspiring millions. People who had never met them began choosing kindness in their own lives, helping strangers, forgiving enemies, lifting others in silence. The world was not changed by fame or power or wealth. It was changed by something far simpler and far stronger: respect, humility, resilience, and kindness. And so the journey that began with whispers and traps ended with a truth that could not be denied. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock had not just inspired millions, they had reminded the world that even in the darkest times, kindness is the light that never fades.